Welcome to the Silver Screen Project, where we look back at a series of films in anticipation of an exciting new cinema release.
Last time round, we watched 2009's hit Avatar in preparation for the brand new Avatar, The Way of Water, which we both saw in the last week.
Yeah, we did.
It was a film. What did you think?
I thought in most ways it improved on the first, but there were some aspects that I didn't like so much, mainly kind of characters and kind of certain story elements, but mostly the kind of characters I think were the weaker part of it. What about yourself?
I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people criticised the first one for being pretty forgettable soon after, and this was also pretty forgettable soon after.
Okay.
But the main thing that stood out for me was that it's really, really long.
Really long. I think there's a good 40 minutes or so in the middle that there's something there and I can see what they were doing, but it's not necessary.
The plot could have been done in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Easily, but they've stuck an extra hour and a half. And some of it is, setting the scene, the world building, which looks fantastic, like the first one. But yeah, it's a bit of a mission watching this.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, the one difference. So first of all, we're going to stay non-spoilers for the first 5 minutes or so, just in case anyone stumbled across this and they can't get to their iPod and change it, and they want to, listen to our initial thoughts, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one of the main differences between our watching experience, I watched it in the 3D. And you watched it in 2D, Lewis.
Yeah,
is that right?
It's good to, get different points of view,
I'm sure
quite
that was
literally.
The reason why. So I don't know how much that will actually affect it. I think, so one of the first things I've kind of noted down is there were some scenes towards the start where I did feel very kind of, I was like I was on a kind of roller coaster, like I was kind of, not literally, but like in a kind of cinematic way. I felt kind of like a little kid in some ways. I felt quite in awe. I don't know if you had that kind of same experience starting it off.
I would agree. Like, one of the things that stood out to me that it was visually incredible. Both at the start, where it kind of shows you stuff we've kind of seen before, but retreading it.
Almost the greatest hits of the first film.
Yeah, you're like, wow. Yeah. And then later on, when they go to a different location, completely different from the first film setting, that also looks fantastic. And it's, I mean, considering it's called The Way of Water, a lot of it's water based.
Yes.
That's not a spoiler.
No, and I think anyone who's seen even like a teaser, you've got a very vague idea of the fact they go to a new location that's like more water space.
I think that all looks fantastic. I imagine part of the reason there's basically no water in the first one is because it's really visually hard to do when it's a mostly CGI film. And they've gone full on it for this, and it looks great. Like, they're going through the water, the Na'vi in the water is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and there's some great design choices, both with the new kind of variation of Na'vi that we see, and all the kind of flora and fauna that go with that.
Yeah,
as well.
And the new creatures that we come across look fantastic as well. Some of the, I mean, a lot of the ones in the first one looked great, but it was like a weird horse and a weird puma.
Yeah.
This has some elements of that, but it's also got some new
There's a couple
designs.
of kind of smaller creatures and kind of just stuff that fill up the world that is a bit more like alien rather than specifically a six-legged version of a dog or whatever it is.
There's that one with the swimming one that's kind of got wings that kind of glides on top of the water. Looks great.
Really cool. Like a kind of flying fish barracuda kind of hybrid, but and there's the things that look a bit like plesiosaur kind of things, the non-flying versions of them. Maybe they're babies, I don't really know how it works,
but they looked really cool. And then I think some other things like the human designs, like the ship ship that's out there on the water looks really cool, and it's kind of, it's similar to what we saw in the first one, but a water version. And it's like
that big warship at the end of the first one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's some interesting world building that comes along with that, which I think was one of the stronger aspects of the film. I think the action, although it's kind of bookended with action as we know it. There's a big scene towards the start when they're still in the jungle area, which I thought was really good. Quite a quick scene, but that's pretty good. And then towards the end, I think there's some pretty good action sequences there, but as we said, the middle is kind of more nature documentary style stuff, which has its positives, but I think, as I said, if I were to cut anything out, I'd probably trim that down a little bit.
You can definitely shorten it, but I mean, I think a lot of the reason people would go to see this is the visual side of it, and for that, it is exemplary.
Yeah.
There is criticisms of it, as you said. There's a big bit in the middle. There's other characters there's returning characters and new characters. Some I liked, some I didn't like. But we'll get into that in a bit. But overall, it wasn't the best film, and I kind of was like, yeah, but it looked great.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was definitely more on the positive side than that. I'll admit there was problems, and I think the characters were mainly. There's a lot of characters in this, and some of the ones they decide to focus on aren't the ones that I would have chosen. Some of the ones that are returning seem to have had strange character choices and changes. There's a character in particular that I would have liked to see more of, who is very absent from this film. Which again we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, generally I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was a kind of very cinematic kind of roller coaster of kind of like a thrill ride of just lots of fun stuff going on. It was that fucking length. It's 3 hours 10 minutes. That's the killer there.
I went to see it on a Monday morning in the cinema with about 10 people in there. So, but
anyone walk out?
No, but just down the kind of aisle from me, from me, was a woman with 2 little kids, and I was like, oh fuck, 2 kids in a 3-hour film. But they were fucking silent during the entire thing because their eyes were glued to the screen because it's so visually and it's all bright colours and stuff. I was like, this is the film to bring kids to, a 3-hour film to bring kids to.
I was gonna say, did you get any of the kind of, there's a faster frame rate thing they use. I don't know if that was only for 3D showings.
I didn't really notice.
Yeah, you probably would have noticed it if it had been there. One of the problems that 3D has always had is because things are slightly blurrier at times. When there's fast-paced action, it can get a little bit lost. And I think I remember that from the first Avatar film. They do the thing that they tried to do in the Hobbit films, where the frame rate speeds up at certain points. And it really does complement well when you're watching it in 3D, and it makes it all stay very clear. But I wasn't sure if that was something that comes across.
It may have been, I just not noticed.
Maybe,
it is the CGI is so good, you kind of forget it's CGI when you're watching and you're in the cinema and you're watching the plot and the story. There's many times I was like, holy shit, none of this is real.
There's certain bits where it's a lot of just Na'vi and there's not any human characters in it.
I would say over 2/3 of this film has no humans.
There's a couple of bits where it's like, oh yeah, there's that little human guy there.
I can think the exact bit you're saying.
But yeah, generally, I liked it. So do you want to get into some spoilers?
Yeah, so like on the positive side, we said
I was gonna say from smash hit to splash hit. Go.
The visual we've already kind of touched on, but they introduce many new characters. We'll go into that. I thought all the Reef clan were really cool. Like the design of them, their tails and stuff looked really cool. And I thought they were quite
arms that are like paddle kind of things.
They were quite fun characters, like their tribe leader and then the matriarch, his partner,
who was Kate Winslet. Did you know that?
I didn't know till after. I thought they were good, and their way of life looked great.
The way of water.
The way of water. They do say many times. It's like their version of I see you.
I feel like I didn't catch it any of the times.
Really?
Yeah, and then I heard someone say, there's a long speech he says about like how the sea affects every part of your life, and that is started by saying the way of water is or whatever, and I somehow missed that one.
So the chief of this tribe's got a few kids. Jake, Sully and Natiri have had they've had 3 kids and adopted Jesus.
3 kids and yes, exactly.
Essentially Jesus. I was surprised that I like the kid characters in this. Like overall, like they're all kind of their archetypes.
I think the 2 sons, so there's an older son who was born shortly after the first film,
who's like the leader,
who's basically Jake Sully Jr. He's very forgettable, but for good reason, because he's the perfect son who dies at the end of the film. The middle, the second troublemaker. I thought the main problem I had with him is that they were like, he's the black sheep, and I was like, but we need to see that he's the black sheep. He was a bit rebellious, but he just kept being a little bit too curious.
Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver plays the younger kid. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious it was her, right? Thought that was a little bit strange.
And her character's kind of strange that she was... There's lots of weird choice of characters in this. So, like, the fact that she's
effectively
daughter,
like a clone is what it seems to be,
so she's immaculately conceived and she's got a connection with the god. Like, I think they're going to really hammer in that way in the later films.
I mean, from what they kind of talk about the parenthood there, what do you think's going on there?
I think, well, we see at the end of the first one where they tried to give it to Awa.
And she says, like, I can see Awa or whatever.
Yeah,
and then she dies.
I think it's an Awa thing. Either a reincarnation. Like she is Awa.
Yeah.
Reincarnated.
It's pretty clear, isn't it?
Jesus. She's Jesus.
Yeah, she's Blue Jesus.
And then then there's the youngest kid who didn't have much to do because she was a little girl, but she was quite fun.
She was cute. She was good. Like, you know, she played a part. There was quite a funny line where she gets handcuffed again.
Yeah,
and that got a big laugh in my cinema.
That was funny. She was like, "How have I got tied up again?"
Yeah,
like 2 minutes after getting released.
And then there is Spider, who is the human.
Yeah.
Tarzan Jr. kind of character.
I really don't know how I feel.
Yeah.
So like parts of him, I was like, he's really fun when he's playing around with the other Na'vi kids.
Yeah,
that's
because they talk about him like a stray cat, and he gets outgrown quite easily by some of them are much taller than him.
Yeah,
and we see him next to adult humans, and he's actually quite tall for a human. Which
yeah,
is quite
at
funny.
first, like when you first see him, I thought he was like 4 or 5.
When we first see him, there's a time skip right at the start. Yeah,
but then he's suddenly much bigger.
Yeah.
For the most part, I quite liked him. There was when he gets captured by the bad guys, and he's suddenly helping them, and he seems a bit
confusing.
I was like, and then he's shocked that they're bad,
and it feels like he's set up for a heel turn. Like even when him and Jake are sneaking in at the end, I was like, is this him leading him to a trap?
Yeah,
but it's not. And then he kind of betrays them a little bit, but
I think they got a bit confused as to the characterization.
I think he'll have things to do in the sequels, as will Sigourney Weaver's.
I think a lot of this film is introducing characters.
I do think, despite that, I think it was fairly well self-contained. I think there's a couple of open-ended threads. But yeah, so the connection with Spider is Quaritch, who is the Colonel played by Stephen Lang in the first film. What did you think of that whole
Not a fan.
You didn't like any of that at all?
So in this, he's brought back as a Na'vi and he's a clone. And I thought it was a cop-out to bring back the villains from the first film.
Yeah, I can see that. I thought it was quite fun in a way because
he
hates like the bit when he's like fighting them all at the start and then he's like, hang on.
Yeah.
And the fact that he kind of comes to the realization that he is a different person in some ways.
Yeah, there was elements
interesting
I like.
there,
I feel like he didn't have to be that character from the first film.
He could have been like a lower down guy or something.
It just seemed like, and even like his crew were the crew from the first film.
Were any of them the same actors? I have no idea.
There was the one guy who's in Daredevil.
Was he one of them? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
But I feel like for the most part, I was just like, oh,
surely there's
got to be more bad guys.
How silly it was, like how they had like massive like sports sunglasses and stuff, and it was quite funny how they kind of had to like go native, as it were, and kind of like learn the ways. And that was why Spider was involved, wasn't it? So
I liked seeing them fly the flying things.
And when he picks like the most evil looking one, and you're like, okay, that was quite cool. But yeah, it was a bit silly, but I think the idea is that we got to see Na'vi on Na'vi fighting, which we didn't really get to see before.
Yeah,
and it puts them on a level playing field and that sort of thing, which makes sense.
I hope that because they're planning like 5 films.
Yeah, they filmed 2 and 3 back to back. Yeah, so that's definitely.
I hope the entire film series isn't just the humans are back again. Let's fight them off. The humans are back again. Let's fight them off.
I think it will get a bit more complicated, but I could see them just moving from area to area and Stephen Lang just following them around each time.
I'd like to see some actual like Na'vi Civil War type thing. I think that would be interesting.
I mean, with all the kind of water tribes that we saw, because we spend a lot of time with one reef tribe, but then they visit quite a few to try and find them. There's kind of some potential tension there because they all got fucked up because of Jake and all this.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like demon blood, and they do mention in this. Another thing that I thought was done quite well was Nayatam, the oldest son, his death. Which I saw from the beginning. He's got 4 kids. Of course, one of them's going to die.
Yeah. And the fact he's kind of a bit bland compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah. But when it actually like happened, I was like, oh shit, no, this actually is
quite emotional. Resonated quite well.
And I thought that was dealt with.
Well, one of the things that comes off the back of that is a character that we haven't mentioned at all for good reason, because Neytiri is barely in this film.
And when she's fucking annoying.
So they make her just like this like annoying wife, and both the wives in this are just annoying. And they're just like, oh, my wife is so annoying. And they just make her like, I mean, they kind of replicate in the first one. There's a couple of moments where she gets really upset, and Zoe Saldana plays it really well. It's a little bit funny because she's kind of waily. They just do that like again in this.
Well, yeah, and she was going on for ages, and I was like, I get your son's dead, but she was so annoying.
And the thing is, like, she could have swooped in almost literally and been like, okay, we're going to war, because there's a couple of moments where they decide not to go to war. She never like gets a chance to take charge. She goes like completely feral at one point and is scary to like Spider. And I was like, is she, she almost turns on him. Like, that was the main bad takeaway because for me, was just how
she's
weird.
An interesting character in the first one as the daughter of the chief, who's the one person the first person to accept the human avatar.
But in this, she's rejecting everything. She feels really backwards. And they're almost making the point that it's only the avatars, the human crossbreed ones, that are any good, and everyone else is like weird.
It's really weird
people.
that she's got this kind of, she does dislike Spider. She's literally married to a human. And she's got kids with 5 fingers on each hand. Like, it's really weird that they've made her.
It's like, really weird. I imagine that's another thing that will keep going through, and maybe there'll be some conflicts going on, because we kind of get the seeds sowed at the end of that. Just a couple of bits on design quickly. The mechs I thought were really cool. The crab ones are really sick.
When the submarines kind of spread out, I was like,
I really like the tall like exosuit things. We don't see a lot of them.
It's got the one scene where they're training the woman,
and they're basically the same height as Na'vi on purpose. And she's drinking the coffee and everything.
Which looks really cool.
That's going to be set up for some cool like humans in them versus Na'vi stuff, because we kind of got that in the first one, but with the chunky mechs.
Because it's chunky, it was less hand-to-hand combat. I really liked the whale design, and I liked the character, the Payukan, who is the second son, like spirit animal. I really liked that whole story with that whale.
And it was kind of like, they were right because he caused deaths, but he wasn't actually a murderer, and it was kind of a bit of like a pride thing, like, almost.
In their culture, I did think it was. I laughed out loud when the whale got subtitles and they was talking. We were watching in the cinema. Amy was like really confused. She was like, "So what's going on?" Like, I get that they'd say like, "Oh, the whales
are more intelligent than people."
They're called like
Tukatan or something.
Tukatan. They're more intelligent. I get that. But when it just started talking to it, I was like, I'm not sure about that. That seems dumb.
It's kind of weird how like every animal is just like a mindless beast that can be plugged into and controlled, but these ones they plug into and like share memories instead. It was a strange choice in terms of like the hierarchy of the world.
Although we did with this character jumped onto the ship at the end and crushed people, and I was like, oh, that's a callback to the first film.
That was there was also lots of Free Willy kind of callbacks in this as well. There was some good stuff with that. The last action scene and the first one as well with the train, I thought were really, really good. They're just really, the action's really like clear and well thought out, and it's not it's all CG, but it's not confusing in the way that a lot of modern, even MCU films can be, which I really, really appreciate.
That final battle was really good, and I think obviously it's there's lots of bits in this that are convenient for the plot, and the eclipse stuff is very convenient.
So it's never nighttime, it's just an eclipse. That's what I gathered from this.
Because,
which I don't think we ever saw
Pandora's
before.
a moon.
Yeah,
so
moon of Pandora, yeah.
But yeah, that happens. And then it's like, it's quite there's no dusk. It's just, we go into nighttime, so we have this night battle. That was all quite cool. And then the whole boat fights were fun.
There's a scene near the start when the humans, the sky people, come back. And there's that sequence I really liked where we see a lot of space stuff because we see the shining lights of the back jets, and then they land and it's just like roasts everything. And there's the cool shot of all the mechs coming out. I was like, that was peak when I was like loving it. Just like,
I like that in world building as well, when Jake Sully's like, oh, the bright light is then decelerating. That's it. And I was like, usually in space films, the ship just approaches and slows down the planet. The fact that they're shooting rockets out to slow down, I was like, haven't seen that before. Makes sense. That's cool. Like, I like that. Like that. So into more negative. One thing that did disappoint me a little, and it's something that happens a lot with sequels when you know there's later films,
right?
Is that for the most part the characters start the film in the same place as they end the film. In terms of Jake Sully has just fought off the humans, settled down with his family and his new people. And it's like both the first film and this ends in that same point, and you're like, oh, theoretically you could skip from film 1 to film 3 and plot-wise it wouldn't make much difference.
I did think that because I assume that they're going to go somewhere else in the next film because he's done his water bit now, even though James Cameron loves the sea and has been there for the last 20 years. I was expecting them to be turfed out at the end, or whatever the sea version of turf is, out at the end, and then have to, start again. But I think the main thing that kind of changed was that between the first film, when he was like a mindless kind of grunt, and he'd kind of learned to be like nice and caring, he seemed to have lost that in the 10 years and then relearn that again over this film.
Yeah, because
he was not a good dad. He was like literally like a drill sergeant. Like they called him sir. Like they had to, his relationship with his kids was really weird. And I think that's supposed to be like the US military fucks you up and you become this kind of strange authoritarian
but you kind of thought he'd got past that already.
Yeah, and it takes his son to die for him to tell his other son that he loves him, kind of thing. It felt Jake Sully was never a good character, but I think they could have made him better in this than he was by far.
And
all his kids have different accents as well, which is really silly.
One little bit that happened in the film that I was like, what? Was at the end battle when Jake Sully and Quaritch are fighting.
Right.
They go underwater and they're fighting underwater. And then Jake Sully strangles Quaritch. And he you think he's dead and he kind of floats.
Yeah.
They're underwater.
Yeah.
What? Surely strangling.
I guess if you...
When you strangle someone, you're closing their throats and they can't breathe. But they're holding their breath anyway.
If you cut off the blood, I think people can pass out.
But it wasn't the blood. He was strangling him and he was cutting. And I was like, he's not breathing anyway. He's underwater.
And that's another thing we see.
It may just be me, but I was like,
we see another occasion of the son who gets saved by the whale. He also passes out in the water, but doesn't die. So I guess Na'vi are really hard to drown.
Yeah.
Because he's like, both of them are bobbing around, just breathing lungfuls of water.
There was lots. So I mentioned there's some convenient plot points, like the fact that Na'vi can breathe human air for a lot longer than humans can breathe, just so they can have scenes of them walking around, and the fact that they bring the two human characters, Norm and the other,
barely though.
But the only reason they bring them up is so that Quaritch can find them,
right?
And it's like they didn't even do anything when they got there.
We didn't mention the two new human bad guys, one of whom isn't really a bad guy, really. What's he called?
Jermaine
Clement, who has a strange kind of American accent.
And the whole thing, I was like, why is he with these people? It's like, they pay for his research. But it's like...
And also the fact they were like, this thing is the new unobtainium. I was going to speak about it a bit later, but they mentioned that it stops aging completely, or human aging at least. Do we reckon that that's going to play in very heavily into a sequel?
Yeah,
I feel like maybe Spider will get his age halted and then it'll skip like 100 years and we'll see like Pandora in the future.
It's weird when they do an age anti-aging thing because the actors can't stop aging. Yeah, they do. Because the actors can't stop aging.
Those actors can't stop acting.
They can't stop aging, so it's a really weird thing.
It is strange.
Another bit that I thought was funny, and I know why they did it, and I'm glad they did it. But near the start, Jake Sully's like, "Oh, I learned the language so well.
Oh my God.
It just started to sound like English to me." And then everyone just started speaking English. I was like,
I think it worked well, but it made me laugh in the cinema.
I was like, I'm glad they did it. And so we don't have to see more pirates because they do bring that back. But yeah, I'm glad they did it and it makes sense. But it does, that line just seems so, there's better ways to do it. Or just don't reference it at all.
No, I thought it was quite funny. I kind of just brushed past it.
It took me out the film.
It did for me a little bit as well. Yeah.
Also, like the first film, it's got a terrible song in the credits.
I think it was The Weeknd this time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I like The Weeknd, but the song was awful.
No. We also mentioned before. This is probably the last bit I got really, but it was pretty sexist, really, wasn't it? All the women, all the age adult women characters were just like mean. They were just like bad. Like the Kate Winslet character,
just mean,
and it was just like the tribal leader was like, "I'm nice and I'll accept you," and she's like, "No, you won't. Like, come over here, I'm gonna slap you."
I thought it was funny as well in the first one. Like last time around, we talked about like, is this racist? Like, it's on that line. And then in this, they just straight up, he's got dreads now. Sam Worthington's playing a guy with dreads. It's like,
and also Kate Winslet's doing like a Maori accent as well. It's like, the guy who's playing the tribe leader is actually like a Maori, like New Zealander guy. So.
Trying to think if I've got anything else. I didn't like the fact that the bad guys return.
They keep saying Sully stick together, and it's like, that's the thing you're worst at in this film. Every single time all of you are together, one of you gets lost and you have to go, and he goes like, that was our weakness as well as our strength. No, it's just your weakness. It's not your strength at all.
It's not even,
they can't even do it. They didn't even get the Spider Kid as well. Like, I know he wasn't technically a son, but then he was at the end. He's like, now you're my son.
He literally says a son for a son. He's like, yeah, you're replacing my son because he's dead now.
And the kid's like having a crisis, like, no, I know my real dad. Also, did we speak about that he's Quaritch's son?
Not a fan of that either. There's also, so like at the start, the kids get like kidnapped and they manage to save some of them and then go off, but Spider gets taken. They just go off and they're like, fuck Spider. And it's like, don't care about Spider.
We know Neytiri doesn't like him. Obviously, Jake doesn't really care about him either, even though he's human. You think he'd have like, you think they would have used it as like, he's a window back into his humanity or something like that. No, they don't mention it at all.
And he literally just leaves and he doesn't think about him again until he turns up at the end.
And they relocate and they're like, it's easy for us because I've only just moved here. Like, it's fine. Neytiri's having a breakdown. You got any trivia at all?
I got one bit of trivia.
I've actually got a couple of bits as well.
Oh, excellent. When asked why the movie is longer than 3 hours, James Cameron revealed in an interview of Total Film, the goal is to tell an extremely compelling story on an emotional basis. I would say that the emphasis in the new film is more on character, more on story, more on relationships, more on emotion. I get that. I agree with that. We didn't spend as much time on relationship and emotion in the first film as we do in the second film. And it's a longer film because there's more characters to service. There's more stories to service. So I get it. They've introduced a load of characters and they want to make an emotional story.
And the original, well, try and keep all of them in, apart from Neytiri.
But like maybe if you're trying to make it a family emotional story, don't you do it in the same film that you're making it loads of new characters.
An environmental story as well. And like a revenge. So one thing about the revenge plot, which we didn't really mention. So they really hammer home that Neytiri killed Quaritch. And there's the bit where they go to the old site of the fight. I thought that was really cool.
And we see the dash cam footage, crushes his skull.
Really, really cool. And he's like, I'm going to get that bitch. And like, he literally says she's a fucking bitch. And then he's like, but Jake Sully. And then he just forgets about Neytiri. And he's like, I'm going to kill Jake Sully. Jake Sully didn't kill you. Neytiri killed you. Very strange. It's like they decided they didn't like Zoe Saldana halfway through.
And I feel like one other thing that I've read based on that is the first film, the kind of what drives it is humans want to get unobtainium. To get it, they need to destroy the home tree, I think it's called.
Yeah, something like that.
And that's what drives it. And it's kind of feels big, impactful because it's their home. In this, the stakes don't seem half as high. It's like 5...
It's more personal, but it doesn't feel as personal.
Yeah,
in a way.
it's 5 humans hunting down Jake Sully.
Yeah.
The rest of the world is largely
I think that's a good concept. I just don't think because they don't find them for like a good hour in the middle, it feels like it loses momentum a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And like films that happens where it changes in the middle a bit, like things like Endgame was 3 hours long, and they then but it kind of was. When they did finally meet up again to fight, although the battle was great, I was like, it doesn't really feel like it means much.
No, I get that. Yeah, I think it works more for me than it did for you from the sounds of things.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, it's not for everyone, I guess. But yeah, did you say you had another trivia bit?
No, that's
mine is just a couple of things that kind of impact how long it's been since the first film. So since Avatar was released, this is just a little kind of the Despicable Me and Minions franchise have both started and are now so popular that they have theme parks dedicated to them.
Bloody hell.
And Sam Worthington has starred in 22 films since Avatar.
Wow.
And Zoe Saldana 25.
Jesus, so she's probably been in films that have grossed like 50 billion in total.
I mean, like a load of those would be Marvel films if you count them. But we spoke a little bit about sequel and future. Did you have any particular predictions just to round it off?
Yeah, I think maybe not in the next film, but in one of either that one or the one after, I think Jake Sully's going to die.
Yeah, I think probably next one.
Yeah,
I reckon.
And the second son will become the main character.
Maybe even against Spider. Spider might change sides.
Yeah,
to make
I
it
could definitely see Spider going bad. And I think it's going to play heavier on Kiri being Na'vi.
It sounds like Kitty whenever they
I was trying to figure out if it was Katie or Katie, and then when I looked it up, it was Kiri. They're going to go more in her being Jesus. I think
definitely. Yeah. Do you think they're going to go to Earth? I feel like they might go. They'll spend some time on Earth at least in like. I think they mentioned the Earth's dying and there's like the whole civilization being built there.
I think that would be interesting to see Earth dying.
I think it'd be interesting to see Na'vi go back there.
But
I don't know why that. Maybe like Neytiri is like, I've got to go kill Giovanni Ribisi. I'm going to go and kill him.
That would be the thing. Like, how do you get the Na'vi characters to go to Earth?
Yeah.
Because their whole thing is they just want to live peacefully on Earth.
And also it's something like 5 years in cryosleep or whatever, isn't it? So...
But I think that's the main thing. They'll pass it on to the next generation, essentially.
Yeah.
I imagine, like you said, we'll go to another place. We'll go to Fire Nation.
Yeah, it's got to be either desert or snow, I'd imagine, would make sense.
And I would like to see the Na'vi in different
that was
locations.
one of the things I really liked. Yeah, like the slight color change. They had like a weird blink that was, I imagine, some sort of contact lens eye thing, and all the other bits we mentioned.
Tails,
yeah, very cool, very cool.
How about you? Any other?
No, pretty much what we said there. Yeah, I think they'll go somewhere else. I reckon the two boys will be rivals probably, or at least Spider will be tempted to switch sides a couple of times.
Yeah.
I would quite like Quaritch to carry on through, to be honest. Maybe even turn to their side. He kind of seemed a little bit like...
Yeah, I did see some predictions, it might have been on Reddit or something, that Quaritch in this film will become good and fight against another clone of Quaritch that's more mean.
Yeah.
So they've got a Quaritch on each side.
It'd be interesting if they get the DNA of a different type of avatar and put Quaritch into that. So they've got like Quaritch in the water one now. Or something like that. Yeah. I think Quaritch is in it for the long run. I reckon we're going to see
I think if he comes back, I'll probably be less against it than was in this, because in this it was like, oh, they killed the bad guy, they're going to bring him back. But now it'll be less of a surprise.
It's more of like, it's almost like a Terminator-y situation of like, they keep going.
He didn't die at the end.
No, this version
he's saved by Spider,
which is going to be a point of contention because no one knows that he's alive or that Spider saved him. So that'll be quite fun. Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, so the last thing to ask, which I kind of forgot about last time around.
We got too excited.
We did. Did this live up to the hype for you? Prod yes or prod no?
I think it did for me. It did, yeah.
Fair
I
enough.
had a good time. Yeah, what about yourself?
I liked it, but I'm going to say prod no.
Yeah, being true to it.
Partly because not only is it like following up from this film, but it's been a 13-year wait for this film.
Yes.
That's a lot of time.
It's a lot of hype
to build up
to. I get that.
And I felt I came out and I was a bit like, oh, that is that's it.
Yeah, what I am interested is when the next one will be, because they filmed them back to back. I imagine there's a lot of CG stuff to do. Do you reckon it could be this time next year, or do you reckon
quite possibly? Wouldn't surprise me.
Amazing if it was this time next year, because it would avoid what you just said there. Of the kind of
wouldn't surprise me if they do it next year and then kind of sit back and do the final two.
Because I think he said that if depending on the two, we'll see whether 4 or 5 get greenlit.
Yeah, but I
think it's doing pretty well.
It's already last I checked, it had already made like 450 million.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Because it's opening in China as well, which a lot of films this year haven't done.
Yeah, it's nearly hit $500 million now. So I mean, it costs like 400 million, so it's got a while to go to be actually successful, but it only came out a few days ago.
The first Avatar was a kind of a long running thing, wasn't it? And I think a lot of that was word of mouth, and whether this gets the same thing or not, who knows? But I
think this was always either going to do really well or just collapse. And I think because it's already got off to a good start, it will do well enough to greenlight later films.
Yeah, it's got to, yeah.
And I think the critics' reviews and Rotten Tomatoes have been generally positive.
Seen, definitely.
So cool. But that brings us to an end for the last silver screen project of 2023. Yeah. We'll be back in the new year with some more. We've already discussed some films that we will be covering, but nothing's final yet. So it's been a pleasure having you along. I hope you've enjoyed 2023's Silver Screen Project. 2022 Silver Screen Project. And I hope you will enjoy 2023's Silver Screen Project. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. I see you.